In a time before COVID-19, island poet Bob Jensen went on a big trip. Bob traveled to Australia, sharing his work in festivals and community halls, accompanied by acclaimed guitarist Tony McManus. Well, now Bob has preserved that experience in a new recording live in Australia. And he joins us now on the line. Hello, Bob.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I know we spoke with you before this experience of heading off to Australia, and I know COVID-19 did impact that experience. So remind us, how did this come about that you had a tour in Australia?
Well, I had booked a couple of dates on my own, and I just happened to mention it in passing to Tony McManus, the Scottish guitarist, and Tony had already toured Australia about a dozen times, and he said, "Oh, geez," he said, "I'll come along, if you'd like." And I thought, oh my God, that would just be absolutely brilliant, of course, So we agreed that we would tour together, and then Tony has a really stellar agent down there, and his agent jumped in and booked a bunch of other dates for us. So we went down, and we had a really nice tour. We did a headline set at Port Fairy, which went really well. And then we played a bunch of little community halls and a big club in Melbourne. And all the dates I thought went really well. Really good audience feedback. And then the last week, unfortunately, we had to cut because, COVID.
Yeah.
Hit with a vengeance. But we did manage to record our show in Brisbane, which I thought was probably our best show, and it was a great audience too. So we're releasing that as a Live in Australia CD. There are 10 cuts on it. The first cut will be a single called The Plover's Nest.
And we'll hear that in a moment, Bob. Yeah. But I know you write in the liner notes for Live in Australia that when you started getting serious about writing again a few years ago, you could never have imagined this experience. So what was it like for you, Bob? I mean, we've talked with you about your poetry. We certainly knew you from your work as a promoter. But what was it like to achieve this dream, to be able to tour and share your work?
Well, it was incredible. It's, artistically, it's the coolest, most wonderful thing I've ever had the privilege to do in my life. When I started writing, I didn't envision performing at all, let alone touring, let alone touring internationally. And the first opportunity that I got was a festival in England, and that came to me out of the blue. I was invited to play this festival, and so I went there and I did that, and then I started doing the odd thing, and I actually had a bunch of dates lined up for 2020 in Europe and England and Canada, and of course everything got postponed. But to go to Australia and do that, it really was a dream, and as I mentioned before on the program, I had an almost crippling fear of public speaking, and it was just one of those things where I just decided, no, I'm not going to let this get in the way of doing what I want to do. And so I went down there, and our biggest audience was over 1,000 people. Wow. And I felt very comfortable doing it, and it was immensely satisfying, and it's just led to a bunch of other things. I'm recording music now, and working with different people all over the world. So it's been fantastic, and it's been something that I never saw coming.
How did you push through that fear, Bob? Because a lot of people have those kinds of fears in their lives, and it really holds them back. How did you push through that fear of speaking?
Well, every now and then I'm confronted with something in life where I just say no, like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, you shall not pass. I just dug in and I said, no, I am not going to let this be a thing. And it's funny, it's just kind of a calm set in. And then I thought, well, we'll see how calm I am, when I start getting in front of people. I never got nervous at all. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think we all have the power to overcome some of these little fears. And So this was just another case of that, saying, no, I'm going to do this, because if there's something that you want to do in this life, boy, it sure goes by fast, and tomorrow never really comes. So you just have to make those decisions. And with the fears that we have in life, I mean, for most of the stuff that makes us frightened, really, what are the consequences? It's not a big deal if you fail. I'm not scared to fail.
Yeah.
I'm not scared at all to fail. And in fact, I fail all the time. I only talk about the little successes I have. So I just focus on the long shots that I get, and not the 99 that I missed in the process.
Now, Bob, you're performing in front of audiences who may be more accustomed to seeing a band or musicians, but here you are as a spoken word poet with the music accompanying you. What was the reception like? What did you sense audiences leaning in and paying more attention to the words?
I did, and I really wondered, well, what's this going to be like? Because Port Fairy had never done a poet like this, so I thought, oh, geez, I've got to entertain 1,000 people with words for 75 minutes. But I did have some wonderful guests, and it worked really well. And then the one where I really thought, might be a bit of a problem was we played a huge bar in Melbourne. Walking in there, I thought, holy cow, this is a bar. People are going to be drinking, and I just kind of resigned myself to people chatting and stuff, and I thought, I won't let that bother me. But when we started to perform, you could have heard a pin drop, and no one spoke during our entire set. So the audiences seemed to really focus in on it, and we seemed to be able to hold the audiences, and in no small part, because of the just phenomenal guitar work of Tony McManus. He really is one of the best stick players in the world.
And so Live in Australia is out there now, Bob. How can people find it?
It's almost out there. It's being mastered right now, and so I expect it to be out in roughly the next week or so. It will be on all digital platforms, and it'll also be for sale on my website, firsttimesinceaugust.com. So it won't be hard to find if you just Google Bob Jensen, Tony McManus Live in Australia. As of today, it's not released. I expect roughly within a week that it'll be out.
And what are some of the projects that are occupying your time right now, Bob?
Well, as I mentioned, I've started recording some music, working on a collection of cover songs by my favorite writers, people like Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and Townes Van Zandt. And just today, I got confirmation that I'm going to be collaborating with a man that Guitar Player magazine calls one of the top 3 guitarists in the world, and that's Spain's Juan Martin, wonderful flamenco artist, and we're going to be recording Leonard Cohen's Suzanne together, and he's also asked me to put poetry to a slow piece of music that he's written. So I'm working with those guys, and I've been working with Chris Corrigan, who's just an incredible talent, with Emma LeBlanc from Vish 10, the cellist from Oyster Band. So working with people all over the world right now, and really excited about it.
We're going to hear from Live in Australia. You mentioned the Plover's Nest, and why don't you set this one up for us, Bob?
There was a piano composer by the name of Eric Satie who was writing from the late 1800s up into around maybe 1925, and he wrote beautiful, haunting, and kind of weird music for piano. And I love his stuff, and my favorite piece of his is Gnossian No. 1. And it just so happened that Tony had recorded it on his classical album. And when I heard it, it was just so absolutely beautiful that I thought, I have to write a poem around this. It seemed like an apology and like a cry for redemption. So I took his reading of that, and I framed the poem around it, and that's how we ended up with The Plover's Nest, and as I think I mentioned, it's going to be our first single.
And we're going to hear that now. Bob Jensen, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Matt. Always great to connect.
Here's Bob Jensen live in Australia.
As I chase the heathered path between the ivory sea and heaven, the gannet's acrobatics fairly lift my buoyant eyes. Though I'm light upon the sweetgrass as a soul that's fully leavened, I do not see the plover's tiny nest there undisguised. For the heavens call a man as they hail a coltish boy, and the moon's a compass for the drunken heart. And the feet that leave the earth in unmitigated joy are heedless to the undiscerning path that they will chart. And when I fall from heaven, drunk and graceless and alone, I pray I will not crush that tiny shell upon those unforgiving stones. For each minnow that I've taken from the morning's bright and pristine, hopeful stream, does the steady burn of teardrops count as alms to recompense their stolen gleam? Reckless is the fool whose path he does impel, with carelessness upon his joyful run. For each time I've been unkind or tread upon a tiny shell, regret is like the helpless trout laid in the midday sun. And when I fall from heaven, drunk and graceless and alone, I pray I will not crush that tiny shell upon those unforgiving stones. For each minnow that I've taken from the morning's bright and pristine, hopeful stream, does the steady burn of teardrops count as alms to recompense their stolen gleam? Thank you, Tony.